speaker today is Betelhem Dessi, an Ethiopian entrepreneur. She's now the CEO of ICOG, where she's trying to promote digital empowerment among the youth in Ethiopia, people who lack access to this type of tools, the STM tools in Ethiopia, if they want to have a future, and especially for girls. For example, with Girls Can Code and Solve It initiatives. And she will be talking about all the wonderful things she's doing. She will be interviewed by Valentina Benincasa, an anthropologist and researcher of the International Projects team of Cyber Voluntarios Foundation. You have the floor.
Gracias a la tecnología. Como CEO de ICOG, forma a miles de jóvenes en robótica, programación e inteligencia artificial. Su pasión comenzó a los 10 años, cuando creó su primer software. Esa curiosidad le llevó a trabajar en la Agencia de Seguridad Informática de Etiopía. Desde ICOG, impulsa proyectos que mejoran la agricultura, la salud de los jóvenes y acercan la formación digital a comunidades rurales del continente. También apuesta por el talento juvenil y femenino a la tecnología, con iniciativas como Girls Can Code o Solve IT. Su trabajo le ha convertido en una de las voces más influyentes de la innovación africana.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for being here in this second day of Empodera. And Betelhem, thank you very much for being here with us today. It's a pleasure for all of us. So before getting into your work in ICOG and the projects you are doing in Ethiopia, I wanted to ask you, you started at a very young age to relation it with the technology and the digital world. So how did it start? And what motivated you, and especially what were the challenges you faced in this journey?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. So when I first started coding, and this was 16 years ago, when I was 10 years old, I was not raised in the capital of Ethiopia. I was raised in the eastern part of Ethiopia. And my father had a shop where he would sell, a lot of phones, DVDs, then, but, he brought out a computer to see whether or not it would sell. And, 16 years ago, this was still very new. Computers were still very new in Ethiopia. We still didn't have mobile data yet, or internet access was not that, expanded. But I was very curious. I was a curious kid, and nobody was interested in computers by then because, people were coming there to buy DVDs and eventually mobile phones. But I was very curious, so he let me, play with it, experiment with it, till it got sold. So then, I started deleting all of the files in the computer and seeing whether or not it works. I would also, watch a lot of movies or Power Rangers at night, and I would see like a lot of websites coming up, so I would want to explore. But I think my turning point was, when I was trying to celebrate my 9th birthday, and I asked my father for some money, and he was busy. So he ignored me, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to make the money myself. I was like, okay. There were people coming out of the shop buying phones, and they had memory cards. I was like, okay, let me edit some of your photos. Let me add music on top of it. So I made about $90 back then. The exchange rate was much better. And I was like, you know what? One, it feeds my curiosity. Two, it's also making money. Because I used to spend my days after school with my dad at the shop, I did understand the value of money. So I was like, you know what? Let me do this. Let me promote my business. And that's when the idea of, I saw a Power Rangers toy was being sold on a website. So why not build a website? So that's how my coding journey started. It was more of, I would say, curiosity. But since then, I've been really passionate about learning, about education, because I genuinely do think it's, a pathway. Because if it wasn't for the opportunity I had, if it wasn't for the access that I had, and to be honest with you, even myself in that situation, I'm very privileged because I had access to those things and I was allowed to access those. But I was able to chart my own path because of the education that I had. So since then, it has been really important to me to kind of, provide that light bulb moment for other young people as it has been for me.
And actually, here we go. We come to your work at ICOG. Could you tell us more a bit about it? Because you are working on expanding, right, the technology and the access to technology all around Ethiopia. Could you explain to us a bit more about that?
So our work at ICOG started because I started as an intern at ICOG Labs, which is an affiliate company, which is the first private AI research and development organization in East Africa. So back then, when I walked into the ICOG Labs office, I was trying to, learn more about AI, and this was the time where ICOG Labs was also contributing on the work of Sophia the robot. I don't know how many of you know Sophia the robot, which is a very famous robot. ICOG Labs has also done works with Hershey Chocolate, Sony Music, providing these type of tools. So I was very curious in terms of to learn, but also contribute. But one of the biggest challenges that we had was making sure that people have the opportunity to actually explore the career path in AI, which had limited the ability for the company to scale, grow, and serve even more clients. So before coming into ICOG Labs, I was a trainer at a Girls Can Code program. So I thought about it, and because it was discontinued, how can we make this sustainable? How do we make money, but also, have impact? So when we started ICOG Anyone Can Code, it was previously known as ICOG Anyone Can Code, was one, okay, there are people who can pay for the services that we can provide, the trainings, so we're going to make them pay, but we're also going to make sure that we reach a lot of young people across Ethiopia and, provide them education around AI. And one of our flagship products right now, which I'm really proud of, is a moving training center, which is called the DJ Truck. It's completely solar powered. It can go anywhere, anywhere remote in the country, and we have, through the DigiTruck, we've reached about 3,000, students, and they've wrote their first line of code, which we're very happy about.
Okay, how is it received, these kind of projects in the more remote areas of Ethiopia? How do people see it, receive it? What do you think?
No, people are actually quite excited to, because it's something new, it's something exciting, but convincing parents to let their kids spend more time, we had to use, different methods. There were, areas where we went where, agriculture, in Ethiopia still agriculture is a huge, source of income, but also a way of life. So our teaching was around, okay, you know what, let's do some games of, farming, or let's see how you can do a calculator and how that could potentially be helpful for you. So we designed projects around the areas we went in, but also another barrier was language. Language is still a huge issue in terms of accessing information. Believe it or not, Ethiopia has more than 83 languages.
83?
Yes, which is a lot. So localizing and contextualizing content was a very important factor in terms of delivery.
Of course, so there are lots of challenges, right, when doing these projects. And how do you believe these projects help the young people around Ethiopia to find alternatives in their lives or to have more options, right, in their path?
Yes, so education, as I said, is very important. Maybe if I didn't get the chance and opportunity, I'd still be fine because I'm fortunate enough to have, that type of resource in terms of education, but there are a lot of young people who wouldn't have otherwise gotten these types of opportunities. So we've been in this, working for the past 9 years, and we've seen a lot of young people that has passed through our programs pursue careers in computer science, software engineering, even AI, and there are even young people that have went through our programs that have now much bigger offices and bigger startups than us. So it's not just about impacting the individual, but also changing the thinking around the community and saying these career paths are important. But still, right now, because a lot of things are changing so fast. Let me give you an example. We were asked if we could do, let's say, a socio-economic impact of AI in Ethiopia. And the thing is, reflecting back, you don't actually see the impacts yet.
Okay.
Because, a lot of the jobs, let's say, are being affected by AI are middle income or like more professionals, while still majority of the jobs that exist in Ethiopia are still very service and labor-based, right?
Okay.
So while these things are happening, how do you make sure that you're also contextualizing it and presenting it in a way that makes sense has been one of the challenges, right?
Okay.
So when you speak of AI, what is AI? Where is AI? How is it going to impact us? Has been, one of the challenges in terms of convincing and, bringing people on board. But other than that, people are quite excited, and it's been a really nice journey for us at ICOC too.
That's so exciting, right? And so in this context, you have a strong commitment with girls and young girls to close the gender gap in STEM fields. What are the main challenges that girls face in Ethiopia in general? It's hard to generalize, right? But what are the challenges you identify in this field?
The thing is, especially when it comes to the issue of gender and girls in STEM, I didn't really understand it, maybe I would say, 4 or 5 years ago, because I had a really supportive dad. I have a really supportive community in terms of the work that I do, but especially growing up and being, starting to grow on my own outside of my family, I saw how much that is not true for a lot of young girls in Ethiopia, and that was unfortunate. And so that's why a lot of the work that we do in terms of campaigns directly relates with the parents, because when you go to young girls that are just in, let's say, in the first or second grade, there's still no assumption of, I shouldn't pursue STEM. Everyone is exploring, everyone is curious. But then as you grow older and you go to high school, that's where really things start to divide. So I think role models play a huge role in terms of making sure that girls are involved, but parents and also career paths. Things are changing. A lot of parents would want their kids to be either doctors or lawyers, but now computer science is also coming up, which is very interesting. But still, there needs to be a lot of push in terms of girls in STEM. But also another thing that we saw was even after you've learned in STEM, once you join the workforce, it's not as easy. It's not. I wouldn't say. It's not convenient is not the right word, but rather when women enter the workforce in STEM, they're so, there's limited amount of still women in the workforce. There's not a lot of community that is supporting. So there still needs a lot of work to be done in terms of, industries and the workforce to make sure that women in STEM are also encouraged.
Of course, it's important for girls to have a reference, right?
Yes.
So it's a nice profile you're creating for these girls. And what are you, if we dream from here to 10 years, what are your main goals, or what do you want to bring your project within education in Ethiopia?
So I think we've worked a lot in terms of training and education side of things. Now we are looking at, what are some of the barriers that we can solve using the technologies that we have. And with the rise of LLMs, we've seen especially how, we can utilize AI to reach a lot of people. So now we've turned and said, okay, you know what, how do we remove the language barrier because that's a huge issue in terms of accessing information, but also the literacy barrier, right? It's not just, kids, but also young people that are joining the workforce, but also, older people that are, doing farming or accessing healthcare. So we are working on crowdsourcing data sets for Ethiopian languages to make sure that these AI tools are also accessible, especially through voice. So we are going in that direction, expanding beyond the trainings that we do, trying to, work on products that at scale would solve issues in terms of access to information and education. So I generally see a lot of, people just accessing these AI tools through their phones in the near future. But, a lot of things change. A lot of things change. So the only thing that is promised is change. So, and as a company, we are constantly innovating. We're constantly looking at ways we can improve. So I'm definitely looking forward to building these tools.
This is so inspiring. And in this work you do you work with which actors are involved? I mean, you work with other companies, schools, institutions. Which kind of other actors you are working with?
Yes, we do collaborate with a lot of organizations. For example, right now we have a 5-year program we're working on to train about 250,000 Ethiopians on digital skills with the MasterCard Foundation.
Okay.
We have done a lot of work with government. We collaborate with ministries, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Labor and Skills. We also have, as I mentioned, the MasterCard Foundation, but also other development partners that have been working on with us to make this a reality. So we are very involved with partners that work in Ethiopia, but also, we have clientele that we serve in terms of, let's say, the language data that we're collecting could and will be potentially be given to big tech companies such as the Googles and the Metas, so that their services are also available in these languages in Ethiopia. So we are both, I would say, social enterprise trying to make money from the products and the tools that we're building, but with a focus on impact, so that we reach the most vulnerable and, especially young people in Ethiopia, outside the capital.
Okay. So actually you are constructing a model, right, of work in Ethiopia. I don't think it will be a good example or a good project that can be taken and used in another contexts, of course, with taking into account the diversity of contexts and cultures. Do you think it can be a model for other countries in Africa or in somewhere else?
So the thing is, a lot of people ask me, why aren't you expanding to other countries in the continent? But I genuinely do believe that there's a lot of work even to be done in Ethiopia.
Okay.
That's one. Second is, even in Ethiopia, we don't even know the whole picture, right? So I'm a young person, a lot of people on my team are young people, but that wouldn't say that we are representing the realities of young people in Ethiopia, because we are employed, we have access to technology, we are educated, which might not be the case for a lot of young Ethiopians. So my and our work at ICOG has always been focused on, how do we solve this problem here? And maybe if there's anything that these organizations in other, countries in the continent can potentially learn from, would be very happy to do it. But other than that, our focus has always been Ethiopia, because, there are a lot of people that understand their own local context, but we're always more than open to share.
Did you have any chance to dialogue with other countries?
Okay, we're over time.
Last questions, and then people.
Okay. What did you say?
If you had any chances to dialogue and present your project to other countries close to Ethiopia, just to be an inspiration for.
Yes, I've been very fortunate to, share my experiences with other countries in the continent, but also work in terms of regional programs that have also included Ethiopia. So yes, I've been very fortunate, and our team is always connecting, especially because AU is also, the African Union is also located in Ethiopia. A lot of our work gets shared with a lot of countries on the continent.
That's so inspiring. Thank you very much for what you share with us. And we can open the question moment. I don't know if anyone has questions for Betelhem. Yes, we have one.
Thank you, Betelhem, for your speech. It's really inspiring. I was curious, you mentioned that you have faced many challenges when it comes to collaborating with the youth because of their parents. I was also curious if you faced some challenges from the government when you wanted to work with them, to collaborate, and if there were some that you sorry.
Okay.
And if there were some that you could fight and get over it, I would be curious to hear as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we want to collect questions or we want
I
to
can
answer?
answer that and maybe...
Yeah, of course, of course.
So, so just to give you a bit of context, in Ethiopia, the government is very powerful in a sense that the government is the biggest employer, the government is the biggest buyer, right? So the private sector is still growing and there's still not a lot of power within the sector. So it is mandatory for you in order to move anything within the country to collaborate with the government. So that has been very important, and I mean our collaborations have extended for more than a decade. But just to give you an example, taxation, there are huge tax in Ethiopia. So for example, when we did the truck that you saw on the video, which is the moving training center, we were, asked to pay a huge amount of tax because, we needed to bring the truck. But, after, it took us almost more than 6 months to get it out. But, that was an interesting challenge, but finally we had made it. But there are a lot of challenges in this case, but our collaboration with government has increased. We even have a department that mainly does work with the government, making sure that they're constantly updated about the work we do. We do lunches, we do events, so they're constantly aware, but we also keep them engaged and involved in the projects that we're doing. I hope that answers your question. Okay.
Hello. Hello. Thank you so much, Betelhem. It's really inspiring, and congratulations on your work on ICOG. I have 2 questions. The first one is, you told Valentina that you have a lot of covering from your family, from your community, doing your work. You feel very, very helped with them. How is it for the rest of the girls, for example, there in Ethiopia, outside the capital? Are things changing there? Is your personal journey helping somehow to change things in Ethiopia? That leads me to the second question, is the impact of ICOG there. How many regions do you reach? How many young people? And if you can share any beautiful story of someone of them that you can share with the audience. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yes, I would say in terms of girls' education, a lot is changing because there's a lot of investment around education, and we see a lot of girls perform really well in terms of primary, secondary education. But there's still cases where in terms of, let's say, having periods or having workload at home, there's still issues that are not handled, and even access to these facilities, infrastructure, that's still something that needs work. But still there's a lot of progress in Ethiopia in terms of getting girls to education. And now that they get into schools, we have worked a lot with the Ministry of Education to make sure that STEM is introduced as early as possible, but also that they looked at as a career path. And the good thing is in Ethiopia, the most successful startup in Ethiopia is led by women, which is called Ride, which is similar to Uber. The biggest telco, Ethio Telecom, is led by women. So we're not, we have good examples that show that this is very possible. So we're constantly trying to push that narrative. So yes, we see a lot of girls joining the industry, but also in terms of even workplace, we see a lot of young people. And because of content creation, we see a lot of young girls creating content in tech, but also pursuing other young girls to come in. So I would say yes, it's not just my effort, but also a lot of young people in Ethiopia has been working towards that. And in terms of reach of ICOG, so Ethiopia is a big place, right? Very diverse. So our focus has always been seeing what can we do outside of the capital, because I also come from another city in Ethiopia. And it was interesting when you told me, oh, this event is happening here because of Yolanda. And I was like, I thought I should do something similar in Harar, but it was very important for me to make sure that access and opportunities are created outside of the capital. So we have been to 24 cities/towns in Ethiopia. There are more than 13 regions, so we've been to every one of them. And we've impacted over 110,000 young people and kids in Ethiopia. And hopefully the next products that we're going to build, especially that are solving the language barriers, would reach in millions at scale. But yeah, that's more or less our impact. Thank you.
Is any more? We have another one.
Thank you so much for coming today and showing us all your project and what you're doing in Ethiopia. And it's so interesting the things that you're telling us, like 83 languages. Like, how can you work with so many languages, so many different kind of cultures? Because one of the questions that I have is there any way that you have like a common ground of language, or it's so much of their culture, their language, that it's hard for them to just choose to have a common language between them?
Thank you. Yes, so one thing that I've noticed, especially after I came here, is how, Spanish is, everyone almost speaks Spanish, it's not necessary for you to learn English, to communicate, to understand, to learn, which is very important, right? But majority of the content that we consume as Ethiopians, or majority of the content that is created is, we don't create it ourselves, but even when we import it. So English was a very important language to learn if you come from a privileged background. But a lot of, your mother tongue is different, but we have, of course, a federal language. Federal languages, actually, we have 5. Even then. But Amharic is the, a language. Another one is called Afan Oromo. But majority of the content, if you look at the internet, majority of the content is still in English. So there's a barrier in terms of communicating, in terms of accessing this information. So what we're trying to do, and yes, there are 83 languages, and we would say majority of them doesn't even have like a proper written history about how it came about. So, but what we're working, and that's why it's important to crowdsource the data from these communities. So after we train them, after we provide them with digital literacy skills, they contribute, right? So we train, these AI models so that, or fine-tune existing models so that we'll be able to reach them in their languages. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done, which is exciting, So we're quite looking forward to working and collecting these data sets and making them available.
Okay, thank you very much. We're done? Okay. So we're done with the questions. Thank you very much, Betelhem. It was a pleasure to have you here and chat with you. And good luck with your journey. It's inspiring and exciting.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Have a good day.